Pre-Calc B Unit 1 test review begins. Number 1, identify the domain. Remember what that's talking about? X. And what do you notice is in here? X. So, remember, f of x is actually equal to y, so we're not really concentrating on that. We're concentrating on what x can or cannot be. Because this is a square root problem, we know there's a rule that you may not have square root of negatives. Just say no. But it's okay to have square root of positive numbers, and it's okay to have square root of 0. How do we say this and relate it to this problem? We just take this stuff out, 8 minus 2x, and we say it can be greater than or equal to 0. That's the way we say that we know this stuff can be 0, but it can also be positive. We say it by saying greater than or equal to 0. And then we just solve it. Divide by -2. But don't forget, whenever you divide by a negative, divide by an inequality by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. So that would be 4. Now, if I was to actually take a little look at it, that would be my 0. Here's my 4. It'd be a filled-in circle, which means bracket, up. And always read from the letter to the stuff. See, a lot of students would read this 4 is greater than or equal to x. That's going to get your brain all flip-flopped. Read it from the letter to the stuff. X is less than or equal to 4, so it's going to go up and that way. Now, Algebra 2, we'd say you're good. But pre-calc, they want the same answer written differently. And that would be negative infinity, because that's what's this way, all the way up to including 4 bracket. So we go on the hunt for that, and there it is, letter B. Number 2, it says identify the domain of the function. Well, before we do this one, we would need to have a graph. And so by looking at this one, we would say, hey, that's a parabola. And the vertex would be 1 to the right, and then down 3, 1, 2, 3. And what we learned was, if this is positive, that means it's going, and remember, this is a y equals x squared kind, which means it's going to be either up like this, or it's going to be upside down if a is negative. But because a is 1, we know it's positive. It's going to be a happy face. It's going to be like this. But this vertex is found by looking here, right 1, down 3. So right 1, down 3, it's a happy face. We don't really care how wide it is. We just know that it's a parabola because this is called a quadratic. And we say, hey, what's the domain? Well, how far left does it go? Well, it would just continually get wider and wider. How far to the right does it go? It would continually get wider and wider. So that would be negative infinity all the way up to positive infinity. And we'd look for that, and that would be letter D. Number 3, what is the domain? Again, your x's of the function here. Now, what is the rule that this problem's asking you to consider? It's asking you to consider the rule, no zeros in the denom, ever. So, regardless of what's up here, we don't really care. Because in the world of fractions, 0 over 10, that's just 0. But what's 10 over 0? That's undefined, and that's what we're investigating, this situation, not this. So we can just disregard the numerator completely, regardless of what's up there. So we take a look at the denominator and we think, hey, we can factor that. That's a good old trinomial. What are 2 factors of negative 21 that add up to negative 4? It'd be negative 7 and positive 3. So we know by looking at this that x cannot equal 7 and x cannot equal negative 3, because these are the 2 values for x that would create this situation. It would put a 0 in the denominator, and they're mathematically impossible. Now, algebra 2, you could be done, but in good old pre-calc, they're going to make you talk this talk differently. So my 0 would be here, -3 would be somewhere over here, and that'd be an open circle, and then 7 would be way over here somewhere. Don't worry about the perfectionistic part of it. 7. So these are the only two things in this entire number line that x can't be. So we consider this, this, and this. There's three different sections of what x can be. So this would be -infinity all the way up to -3, but because it's an open circle, which means x can't be -3, it'd be parentheses. Put the little u in between them. That means together with or along with. Now we have to explain this, which is just -3 all the way up to 7. But then there's a third section over here that goes from 7 all the way to infinity, parentheses everywhere. So we go on the hunt for this, and it looks like it's this guy right here. So we circle it in. All right, let's go on to this one. It says identify the domain. Again, it's asking how far to the left does it go, and how far to the right does it go. So this one's not too bad. Obviously, it's going to go to the left forever, so it's going to be -infinity. How far to the right does it go? Well, it gets to the y-axis. In other words, it gets to x is 0. But it does get there. It's right on the y-axis, so x is 0, so it's a bracket. So -infinity all the way to 0 would be letter C. This says, what is the range? Well, the range is the measurement of the vertical part of it. How high does it go? How low does it go? But we start with how low it goes. Well, this would be -infinity. Up here would be positive infinity. So that would be letter D. This says identify the range of the function da-da-da-da. Well, if we recall, this is the same drawing as this one. So the range, again, is the vertical measurement. How low does it go? Well, according to this drawing, it gets down to -3. If you think of it as thermometer, you're thinking vertically. It gets down to -3, and it does touch -3. And then how high does it go? Well, it goes up and up and up forever. So that would be infinity. And that would be right here. All right. Number 7. This problem is just talking about your functions. Remember the video I played for you by Phil Collins that says inside out? This is the same thing as this. And we're supposed to concentrate on whatever's on the inside, and we just take care of that first. So that means find the equation identified by the letter G. There's my letter G, so this is the equation. So we take the x and we replace it with whatever they tell us to put in for x, and that's -2 in this situation. That's -2. So this would be -4. So the yellow stuff turns into -4. So the math problem turns into f of -4, which means let x equal -4, but put it into the equation defined by f, which is, there's my f, but this is the equation they're talking about. So it's going to be 2 times -4 squared plus 3. Now don't forget PEMDAS, exponents first. 16 times 2 is 32. Plus 3 would be 35, and that'd be letter D. Okay, this one is a little bit more abstract because, see, that one has a number we actually play around with, and our answer ends up being a nice solid number. This one is just saying, and this is strange, but let's concentrate what I said earlier. Start on the inside, and that says find f of x. Well, technically it means find the equation defined by letter f, here it is, and replace all the x's with x. I know that's strange, but it's technically like you take that x out and you replace it with whatever's in there, which happens to be another x. So after I do that, I just get x plus 3 again. So that becomes f of x, as strange as that sounds. I mean, easier, you could just say f of x. What's f of x equal? This stuff. So anyways, it turns into g of x plus 3. Now is where it's going to be interesting, because this is saying find the equation defined by g, here it is, and put this stuff in for x. So I got to put that in there, which means I get x plus 3 squared minus 2. Now remember what I talked about in class, 2 plus 3 squared. If you actually followed PEMDAS, that's a 2, you would go 5 squared, which is 25, and that would be your answer. Now a lot of students, they forget a little bit of algebra, and they distribute this 2 here, and they distribute the 2 there, so they get 2 squared plus 3 squared, and then they get 9 plus 4, which is 13, and that is just not correct. So when you get to here, you cannot distribute that 2 to there and think you're on the right path. This is saying you have to square the binomial, which means x plus 3, figure that out, and then subtract 2. Now I'm running out of space a little bit, but let's go ahead and FOIL this out. X times x is x squared. Outside, 3x. Inside, 3x. Last, 9. And then we got that minus 2. So this turns into x squared plus 6x plus 7. And where's that? Letter B. All right. All right, so number 9 says, given f of x is equal to 2x minus 3, find the inverse function. So find the formula, which is just another word for equation, okay? So these are step 1, step 2, step 3. First thing we do is we understand that f of x is nothing other than y equals 2x minus 3. So that's step 1. Replace, if this is g of x, h of x, doesn't matter, it equals y. Now we're going to switch the letters, and now we're going to solve for y. So we're going to add 3, and I'm going to turn this thing around. So I get 2y equals x plus 3. And then I'm going to divide everything by 2. I could multiply everything by a half, but I can see my answers are dividing everything by 2. So I'm going to divide by 2. And that would give me y equals x plus 3 all over 2. And then the last thing I do is I take the y out and I replace it with this, because it is the inverse function, because I did replace my x's with my y's. So that looks to be letter C. All right, got a few more minutes for this portion of the video. And number 10, because of recent cutbacks, a company's marketing budget of $23,000 is cut by 13.5%. What's the new budget? Well, this is a calculator special, you guys. We're not going to do anything too fancy with this. So all we're going to do is we're going to take 23,000 and we're going to multiply that by this decimal. Remember, percent, we're going to move the decimal back 2, so it's 0.135. So 0.135. And then we're going to subtract that. So subtract 3105. So 23,000 minus 3105. And that's 19,895. Now we're going to go on the hunt for that. And there it is right there, letter C. Yeah, just not going to do too much with that. It's just kind of a straightforward, common sense sort of problem. Okay, I think we can squeeze this in. We got one more minute. It says identify the domain. And notice, what do we have? We have another fraction. This is very similar to number 3's explanation. We cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So we look at this and we say, okay, I'm not going to worry about the numerator, but this is a difference of 2 squares, so I'm going to go ahead and factor it. X minus 3, x plus 3. So I can see x cannot equal 3, and x cannot equal negative 3 from this and this. So if I need to draw a little drawing, there's my 0, there's my negative 3, there's my positive 3. These are the things that x cannot equal. So I need to explain this space, and this space. And that would be, this space right here would be negative infinity all the way up to negative 3, doesn't touch it, so parentheses. In union with negative 3 all the way up to 3, that's this space. And then, in union with